Welcome back to Earth Station Trek, a show where we trek from the early days on NBC to the future on Paramount Plus and everywhere in between. I'm Charles Kelstone. It's my privilege to introduce the Earth Station Trek crew, Keith Johnson.
Fortune favors the bold.
And
it's not what they said in the show, but it put me in mind of
that. And Veronica Dashel.
Hi.
And welcome back.
Yay.
Yay.
Yep. And we're here today to talk about episodes 16 through 20 of Star Trek Prodigy Season 2. So did you want to give us a spoiler warning, Veronica?
Beep, boop, spoilers.
Okay. And that's spoilers for Ascension Part 2, Brink, Touch of Grey, and Ouroboros Parts 1 and 2.
Cool.
What are you clicking on?
I'm trying to get to the chat thing so we can see when people post. Oh, that's the private chat. You need to click on comments.
Yeah. And already we have a commenter.
Right.
Wayne is back with us. Tigerblade 2002. Welcome back, Wayne.
Hi,
Welcome, Wayne.
Yeah, so we're finished with season 2 of Star Trek Prodigy and potentially with Star Trek Prodigy.
Yeah.
Now the last couple of weeks we kind of broke it down into episodes because there were some like episode of the week adventures mixed in there. This week was really like the plot.
Yeah.
So it all kind of runs together for me.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
But we picked it up with part 2 of Ascension, and we got a resolution to our cliffhanger of Wesley Crusher.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, last week we were talking about like how on earth could Ascensia capture Wesley Crusher, and I thought maybe she had tricked him, but no. And I think their explanation made perfect sense. It was part of his plan.
I thought the same thing.
Yeah. Okay. I thought that works. That he's seen all the different timelines, and he picked one where he gets captured by Ascensia and gives her the information and a little bit of misinformation. It's like I would have a hard time jumping onto a plan that involves me being captured and tortured. But good for Wesley Crusher.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I thought it was interesting they said that because in my notes because I watched the last episode from the last grouping we had done again, and when Wesley shows up and waves his hands and the dude's guns disappear, my first note, of course, was how the heck could she shoot him in the back? And you think he'd have like almost a spidey sense because he kind of sort of know what's going to happen. So then this made sense, right? That it was all his plan. And I have to say, still, Will Wheaton's natural ebullience and effusiveness and talkativeness works for this character because he's basically played a kind of slightly mad scientist, just on the edge of that, and it's working.
Yeah. And I've said on the show before, and not a whole lot because I don't like to pick on him, but I'm not a big fan of Wesley Crusher. I never really have been.
Right.
But I really like this version of Wesley Crusher. I think like meeting sort of the fully formed adult Wesley Crusher finally, I think has made the character on the whole better for me.
Absolutely. Same here.
They haven't shied it all away from his nerdiness or his awkwardness or his brilliance. But I think now I haven't really gone back yet. But I think now sort of watching the kid who will become this Wesley Crusher, I think knowing where he winds up, I think will help.
Yeah. And I think also I thought about that too a couple of times is the fact that he is what we would almost call a super genius makes sense because he doesn't just have powers. He actually literally navigates the space-time and different continuities and different realities. He keeps all that crap in his head because at the end they were doing calculations. They were doing all kinds of crazy math just to figure out. And I'll, to bury the lead from earlier, I will say this is probably the first time in Star Trek history where I didn't try to follow the timeline, timey-wimey. I got so lost in this after a while. I just had to give up on this one.
Right. Well, and of course we started off talking about a legacy character they brought back, but let's talk a little about our main characters, and particularly Zero. Zero had a big arc in the first episode we watched in this round, and we've sort of talked about it all season. Was that Zero had wanted to become corporeal, had attained a corporeal form that was dying, and in this one he gave up his corporeal form in a pretty, not necessarily gruesome, but gruesome for a kid's show, I would think.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because it was already emotionally intense because Zero was already on the cane. And then the doctor had told Zero that the leg wasn't going to recover. And so you're almost approaching like zombie type thing where stuff doesn't heal. And so when Zero was just walking around with the cane and then going through the gas and basically dying, that was pretty intense. Medusans We've never seen them outside of a container. Can they just float around? I forget. Has it ever been shown that they always need a container?
Yeah, in season 1, we saw them floating around on that planet when they were captured by Kazon, of all people.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. That's right.
I don't believe Kazon can capture Medusans, but okay.
Yeah, they keep trying with the Kazon.
I know. They're trying to bring Kazons back, and Kazons were never cool.
Stop trying to bring Kazons back. Kazons aren't cool.
Yeah.
And then we saw Zero outside the containment suit at the end of I guess it was sort of mid season 1 when he drove the Diviner mad, or they drove the Diviner mad.
Yeah.
So so they could exist outside the containment suit, but running the risk of driving the Voyager crew all mad.
Got it. Yeah. So the suit protects other people, and then also allow. I guess do they need a physical body to affect physical things that they don't have telekinesis and stuff like that. So they need robotic hands or something. I guess.
I don't know, because they were flying around in a spaceship in season 1. That's how maybe they have particular controls that Medusans can control with their thoughts, or maybe they have containment suits inside. I don't know. Yeah. But at the very least, they can control the containment suit.
Yeah.
So they have to be able to manipulate something.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Either it's thought or it's telekinesis. Yeah, I don't think Zero's arc was surprising to any of us. I was a little surprised that Zero ended right back up in kind of sort of the same suit. Dahl even said, "Well, you're basically back in the same suit." Then they and Jacob said, "No, it's got sensors, so Zero can feel things."
So really, they could have skipped this whole arc and just given them sensors on their suit from the jump,
right?
And done that like 8 episodes ago.
Yeah, and I hate to be that guy, but when I'm looking at that containment suit, I'm thinking, heck, going all the way back to the original series, the Sargon's people were telling them how to build androids, and we've got Data, and then we've got that crazy old synth body that they put Picard in. And so I'm kind of sort of thinking, why would you want to end back up in that robotic thing with that big bubble for a faceplate or whatever? But I guess the point is it doesn't matter.
I think Zero feels like that's their body. That's the body where they met their friends. That's the body where they became a family.
Well, maybe, but they seem pretty attached to the new body.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, it could just be because Jankum Pog had to do it on the fly during a battle and already had like that in the database,
Yeah.
Wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel. But that's another thing too. Like we've given Discovery a hard time over the last several years for having like deep conversations in the middle of action scenes and things like that. But here we had Zero calling Jankum in the middle of the battle, Jankum leaving his post to go design a suit in the middle of the battle. What do we think about that?
No problem with that.
You don't?
I noted it too, because one of the people on the bridge was like, "Hey, what are you doing with the big replicator?" Basically paraphrasing, and he was like, "Leave me alone. I got to do something real quick."
Right, we're right in the middle of something right here. Yes, I thought for one, just using your comm badge to call your buddy on another ship during a battle, I think is a little silly. But also, let me run down to the vehicle replicator. It would have made more sense if Jacob had already built a suit, or Zero had a backup suit to escape into.
Yeah,
to me,
same here.
Or just floated off for a bit until it could be completed after the battle.
That's what I was actually expecting that, Veronica. I thought Zero, maybe I thought Zero might pop out and then do something like say, "Hey, don't look at me, don't come in here until I get my body," or something like that.
I would have loved if in the middle of this big battle and we're all losing and so forth, and Zero was like, "All right, forget this. I'm shedding this physical form, and I'm going full on Medusan in the middle of this battle." And we would have got a Medusan like full glory, like, you know what? I can't feel pain anymore, but you can,
Oh yeah, that would have been great. Like, hey, look at this.
Yeah, like driven the bad guys mad. Like you could have done a lot of cool things with the Medusan, and maybe Zero could, seeing the value in their original form.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Same here.
I like Zero though.
Me too.
Frank, you started going hoot hoot sometimes. I've heard you.
Yes, I've done that a few times.
Well, something sort of ancillary to this that we've talked about before was, okay, so the Doctor couldn't go to that cargo bay or the shuttle bay because he said that the hollow emitters have likely rusted over because of the time dilation. But he's got his flipping mobile emitter on.
Yes. I thought the same
mobile
thing.
emitter might decay as well, though.
It might, but that's not what he said.
No, but he probably didn't even mention it because it's a one thing in existence and will never happen again.
Okay, but you think it would decay faster than Zero's physical form?
No. And here we go again to get picky. Two things I wrote, and I had to write this down. I'm like, what the hell is the holo emitters made of that they would quote unquote rust? That makes no sense. They should be like some kind of advanced polymer. So I know I'm being that guy, but I couldn't. And the other thing is, the thing about the mobile emitter is really weird. Veronica, you mentioned one of a kind. It's really weird because we said this before. Transport and replicator technology is weird. Here's the thing. You don't have to understand the mobile emitter's technology. Can't you just stick it in a replicator thing and say duplicate? It really kind of makes no sense. They can't make it again because it's just matter. They should be able to scan it and recreate it. So it shouldn't be one of a kind. It's really.
That's the same thing with them having the cloaking technology and not being able to replicate it. And other people can like get a Klingon ship, and sure, they can use a cloaking device on the Klingon ship, but they can't put the cloaking device on their ships because it's not interchangeable parts, just like the
they do,
Space
though.
Nine.
Yeah, unless
they do sometimes.
Yeah.
Like
they
Scotty.
do sometimes, but it takes a lot of rejigging, and it's not just a simple, we're going to copy this thing and it's automatically going to work type of
Well, they had to
thing.
come up with an excuse on Next Gen, which Keith tells us about all the time.
Yes, that stupid treaty.
They had that treaty, the Treaty of Algernon, that forbade the Federation from having cloaking devices. But how about this? Here's another fan theory for the mobile emitter. Aside from in reality where they just don't know how the mobile emitter works. Okay, so maybe it's not the original mobile emitter. Starfleet confiscated that because it's 29th century technology, and they made their own that is not as good. So on the ship, he uses the ship's hollow emitters, and then when he leaves the ship, he uses his little mobile emitter that works for like 10 minutes at a time or whatever, and then comes back on the ship. What do we think?
That's okay.
I'm trying.
I know it's really hard. It's really hard because again, and I actually like the show. Usually I start getting down these deep wormholes when I don't plot holes when I don't like something. But I was just sitting there going, at the end of the day, the mobile emitter is matter, and they have replicators. You actually don't need to understand how it works. Plug it in there, and the replicator will scan the molecules and atoms. May not understand how they work. It duplicates them. So they should have like a whole. He should have a box of replicators, like all right, mobile emitters. He should be able to go on a mission. There's a box, and he just grabs one, takes it. Speaking of the mobile emitter, I gotta jump to this again. How many times have I said this? Why does that mobile emitter have to show up on the surface of his holographic body?
I know.
Because here we go again. She grabbed it. It's right there. They just grabbed it. And
people smack it all the time.
Yeah, his evil twin in what was the episode? My gosh, the one with Captain Ransom in Voyager.
Right.
I should know the name of that episode. The two-parter.
Keep talking. I'll think of it.
Yeah, the two-parter where Ransom they found out was in the Delta Quadrant, and Ransom his crew had been killing those aliens and using their energy to soup up their warp drive. I don't know if you remember there, but when the doctor hologram on that ship told him, our doctor, that he'd been experimenting on the aliens, he says, that's completely against what we're supposed to do. He goes, I know, they deleted my ethical subroutine. And he took his pad, and as she said, he just hit it. He whacked it, the mobile emitter just went offline. So it's great.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some of the other new characters. I mean, we had Majel and the Nova Squad. We got to see Nova Squad actually in combat. And Dal joined them. We get a little Star Wars action with some fighter ships flying around. So what do we think of how have we liked Majel so far this season?
I liked her a lot. She's been a fantastic addition to the regular cast.
Okay.
Me too. I like her character. I think they did a decent job of
Equinox.
Hey, thank you. That's it. Thank you. That's the one. I can't believe I don't remember that episode. Yeah. I think they did a good job with the show because I don't think there was many surprises in plots or character developments, but it was still kind of cool. They introduced Nova Squad and Majel just irritating enough to where their very slight arc of not redemption, but just becoming better people made sense. And so I kind of like that. Yeah. I kind of like the way Majel gelled with them really well. She's really cool. And I did like the battle of them, but for the life of me, and I reran that battle 4 times, I do not understand the Boothby whatever maneuver that was needed, because it seems like all they did was jettison and hit the gas. I don't understand.
They ignited their plasma and flew in a straight line.
Yeah, like what? And then they go straight up.
Right.
They flew, what is it? They go fast. And so I was like, what was a Boothby? Boothby wasn't the starburst. What they called the Boothby?
The supernova?
Yeah. I was like, I don't get what that had to do with that big thing that was chasing them. So
yeah,
and then
the maneuver that Nova Squad was trying to do back in First Duty was more impressive. Maybe that's why this is allowed now. It's like, okay, you can do the plasma thing, just don't turn and fly in a straight line.
But then as they were headed toward the thing, one of them was it Jankum, and someone goes, "No one's ever done this before." And then I looked, they jettisoned, and like you said, they flew real fast, and then they went straight up. And that was it. Okay, is that it?
Yeah, that giant torpedo that stabbed into the ship made me think of Discovery. Discovery's done that before, where it's like a torpedo that's the size of a spaceship that crashes into the ship.
Yes,
that gave me Discovery vibes.
Yeah.
And also for me, it reminded me there's an episode of Voyager where the Voyager, remember, it got hit by a chronal torpedo that actually also got stuck in the ship.
Right.
And it was changing time. I think
it was Voyager.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, it was Year of Hell. It was Year of Hell. I think that's where that happened. And I think that was the one. But yeah, it reminded me of that as well. Because first when it hit, my first thought was, if you can penetrate a ship's hull with a BA torpedo, then why didn't it just blow up? I mean, it was really far inside, blow it up, and that would take care of everything.
Right.
But so I did wonder about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've been talking about this one episode now for like 17 minutes. So let's move on to some more of them. Yeah. So they went back to Solom, and I liked their little mobile cloaking device thing.
Yeah, that was really
that was funny.
Cool. I had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I like how it wasn't perfect and didn't work perfectly.
Yeah. And then it was when it was glitching and they couldn't tell it was glitching, and they're like, I think they could see us. Like, no,
that was great.
Like, I'm pretty sure they could see us.
That was silly but funny because they were literally just, you're right, they were right there. I mean, and then they do the thing everybody does in a bad comedy, they start whispering so everybody could hear them. Quiet. They're right there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that whole sequence was fun. The kids, they kind of had the vibe. Remember that time that like Jake and Nog had to like fly a runabout?
Yes.
It's like if that was a series. You know what I mean? Where it's like there was a young adult series of books or a kid series of books. I don't know if it was even classified as young adult back then. That was about Jake and Nog's adventures that I used to read when I was a kid. And it has that kind of vibe where it's like the kids on an adventure. And I do like that going on in Star Trek, even if sometimes I balk at how much they get away with.
Yeah. So it was kind of funny.
Yeah. Well, what did you think of Solom?
The whole
planet.
line?
Yeah.
The planet
what was going on this week?
It was kind of cool. And even though I kind of think, again, kind of giving away the lead, even though I thought Ascension kind of sort of started becoming a little stereotyped and cardboard bad person.
Right.
I thought the kind of Nazi fascistic like way she was rebuilding the planet as a machine of war was kind of impressive and cool. And again, she's like every bad person in history, only I can save you, which is really weird. And then it's like, I'm going to crush individuality and freedom and maybe kill a bunch of you for your own good. Right. She really went far.
And most of them were like, I don't really like that. No, not so much.
Yeah. That's something about the show that I really like is, it's Ascension is doing the whole like, autocracy, fascism, fear of others. That's the whole Solom story. It's something that we're having to deal with now, that we've got people who are championing fascism and isolationism here in America.
Right.
So I think that resonates. And I think that's nice to do in a kid's show. But I also really like that it's the leaders of the rebellion who are standing against it are the younger version of the bad guys on the show.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever seen that on a show before that I can think of. Where like the big bad, like the younger self is like, no, I'm not doing that. And that's something that I think about a lot because like I spend a lot of time on like 1950s and 60s media. And in the 60s in particular, you have like the baby boomer generation when they were the young hippies and free love and all that kind of stuff. While meanwhile going on in real life, the baby boomer generation, a lot of them are like championing fascism and, undoing democracy. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's an interesting juxtaposition that what would they have thought if your 20-year-old self could see you right now, or your 17-year-old self could watch you at this
Absolutely.
rally? You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And I think that's just an interesting thing just for science fiction to tackle.
Yeah, and I thought they did a good job with that too. And I thought her younger self was probably going to have a much more straight up pivotal role in her defeat, but I guess maybe that would have been a little bit too predictable as well. Although she was, as you said, part of the rebellion, so that helped.
Yeah. Yeah, and the young diviner, who I've loved his portrayal. I was really not expecting John Noble to come back as young diviner and be a sympathetic character throughout the entire season.
Yeah, that caught me off guard.
For the switch to flip.
Yeah, because I mean, he was the big bad of season 1.
Yeah, so speaking of, we'll have to get. Well, I asked that question at the end about the big bad. I got a little confused in the timey-wimey stuff, but
right.
I'll ask that toward the end. Yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting what she was doing with the with the planet, and the thing that I thought was interesting also is the way she, although Wesley meant for this to happen, the way she co-opted the technology and his knowledge and learned to utilize it so relatively quickly was very interesting.
True. Yeah. Made some good use of it though, because those little like temporal pod things were pretty cool, pretty impressive.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, we've got a comment from Tigerblade 2002, or as Alan always says it, Tigerblade 2002. Says sometimes I get the distinct notion that the writers suffer from some sort of senility.
Do tell Wayne in what way? Yeah, you gotta tell us that.
And I can see things like they don't know how the mobile emitter works. Okay. I mean, they're keeping a lot of stuff going, but I think the writers in the show are actually doing a really good job.
Yeah.
I think the show, I mean, for a kid's show, it's pretty complex and interesting, and they're not shying away from the Star Trekiness of it. You know, like they're going in like Star Trek multiverse and like deep cut references and things like that. I think they're doing a good job, and I think they're doing a particularly good job with the characterizations.
Yeah. I thought the chronal thing was cool because I've seen that in other types of stories. Dragon Ball Z, if I remember correctly, I think Goku would actually go into an alternate universe where the gravity was super heavy, but I think time went faster. So that because if you've ever watched Dragon Ball Z, I mean, the show is like ridiculous with people's powers ramping up super fast. But one of the things Goku would do is he'd go into this other dimension or other reality, or other time. Time went faster there. So he could train for like a year there, and a week has gone by here. So then he comes back out all super buff and stuff like that. So I thought that whole thing about, having a local chronal thing so she could build stuff faster, that was pretty slick. That was sweet.
Yeah. And I mean, ultimately, the goal is to send the protostar back in time to set in motion the events of season 1, which they succeeded at. And I guess, and I kind of complained earlier in the season that the only one who was blinking out of existence was Gwen.
Yeah.
But I guess she's the only one who wouldn't have been born if the protostar never went back in time.
Right.
You know,
the others wouldn't necessarily have been there.
They wouldn't have been there, but they would have been someplace, presumably. So okay, I can sort of get on board with that. It's an interesting way for time to work.
Yeah. The time travel is again. I tried. I could. After a while, I couldn't keep up with time travel in this one.
Yeah.
Then when you do weird things like give people little belts or little bracelets that keep them outside the timeline, I really start getting lost with stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean they did that kind of a thing, I guess, in past tense, which we're going to be watching here pretty soon. Because they, like when O'Brien and Kira were beaming back in time, didn't they have some sort of stabilizer thing, or was that just like a locator thing to beam them back?
I think that was just a locator thing, but somebody else had something that kept them outside of time. Now that you mentioned it in Star Trek, and I'm trying to think of who it was, because they would lose their thing and then they would disappear. Gosh, what was? It'll come to me.
Yeah, I know they've had it before, where like the chronoton particles protected us from the changes in the timeline. Otherwise, like the time travel happens and the show's just over. Because there's no one to set it back. And that's happened pretty regularly. First Contact springs to mind, or I guess if you're on the Guardian of Forever planet, when the time changes, you sort of stay, like in City on the Edge of Forever. I don't know if we've ever seen anybody like blinking out Marty McFly style after time has been changed. Can you think of that? Any instances of that happening?
I think that's the only one, because I don't think of anyone else. No, I don't think anyone else has faded like that.
Not that I can think of, but we may well be wrong. They could probably point to an episode of Voyager or something like that where it happened. Yeah, so ultimately it was sending the protostar back in time. And something I didn't really talk about last week, they fixed the protostar up to make it look brand new after it had been sitting on that planet for 10 years. And sort of did it between episodes.
Yeah.
Because like we got our power back, and in the next episode, the protostar's gleaming again.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
and I presume they've gotten all of Chakotay's stuff out of it from his 10 years in isolation. It's reset the protostar back to like its factory condition, you know?
Yeah. Speaking of Chakotay, I don't think I've ever seen anybody so well adjusted. Like I said last week or whenever, dude was 7 years in the Delta Quadrant. Now 10 years of, at least in the Delta Quadrant, he had a whole ship around him. And now 10 years in solitude, other than Janeway hologram. And here we go again, typical Star Trek. He's like, hey, I want to re-up, put me on a ship again. I want to go right back out into space. I mean, super well adjusted given everything he went through.
Right. And then in between there, he went into the future on the planet Solomon and was captured and had to escape. Like nothing ever goes right with Chakotay.
Yeah.
And like you say, he's well adjusted because he just steps back on the ship, puts his uniform back on, and is like, all right, next mission.
Yeah. And off he goes. That was pretty wild.
Yeah. Well, let's take a quick break for about 30 seconds for a promo. And then when we come back, we'll continue talking about Star Trek Prodigy Season 2, Episodes 16 through 20. So stay right there.
Attention, people of Earth!
Turned on the TV late last night.
Cause I felt nerdy.
Saved the galaxy from a fright.
Cause I felt nerdy. On my TV late last night, cause I felt nerdy. Defied gravity and took flight, cause I felt nerdy.
Exterminate, seek, locate, destroy. I have to go. Having some problems up here. Good luck, stay safe, see you soon.
And we're back. Yeah, so last season, one of the things I liked about it was it started off with the kids on the protostar with hologram Janeway, but then over the course of the series, it seemed like it had sort of evolved away from that.
Yeah,
you know, they were the protostar was destroyed at the end. Janeway sacrificed herself, or hologram Janeway sacrificed herself. The kids were moving on and entering the world of Starfleet and so forth. And I don't know, this season it seems like they feel like they have to double down on that and circle back to it.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, they, as far as like they getting not even just a new protostar, but getting the original protostar back on the show, getting hologram Janeway back on the show.
Right.
They really went through a lot of trouble to do that. And then at the end of this one, this time they really made a backup of her.
Yeah.
But it still isn't the hologram Janeway that they knew that they were friends with. This is the hologram Janeway that Chakotay knew. And
absolutely.
10 years with, you know?
Yeah, it's not the same one.
Yeah.
All right, we've got some comments. Kimberly Ann Hart is with us again. Welcome back.
Hey,
it says
Kimberly.
Tom Paris aboard Voyager A, ready for warp, Admiral. And it said Janeway, good to have my crew back together. Belana Torres, you have warp at your discretion, Admiral. And Tuvok, all decks report condition green. She's writing a fanfic in the comments. But that's awesome. I would have liked to have seen more of the Voyager crew.
Yeah.
The original Voyager crew. And I do like the new additions we've had to the Voyager crew.
Me
we
too.
can talk about them more. But yeah, I would love to, if the show comes back, I would love to see more of Kim and Tuvok and Paris and Torres and so forth.
Yeah.
I am telling you, I've said this before. Garrett Wang, dude, I mean, seriously, he is like the only person who has expressed desire to come back who they haven't utilized yet.
Yeah.
I mean, there's other people like, I'm always blanking her name, Roxanne Dawson, Belana Torres. She doesn't want to act again. She's a very successful director. You look at other people, I don't know about Ethan Phillips, who's Neelix. Of course, well, I started saying Neelix, they left him in the Delta Quadrant, so what? And but Garrett Wang is right there. I mean, he does a freaking weekly podcast, for God's sake. He's at all the conventions, and they were like, and then the last thing we heard was, remember, he said something like, they said, oh, we were kind of sort of going to use him in this show, but we were going to use him in that other show, and both fell through. So it kind of sucks.
And I apologize for reminding you that this exists. But Ethan Phillips did come back as Neelix in Very Short Treks.
Oh, holy Veronica.
So he would be willing to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you'll do Very Short Treks, you'll do anything.
Yeah, this is true. That's a good point.
I mean, they really could have run into Neelix. Might have been the most natural for the kids to have
Yeah.
just run into,
Yeah.
jumping around the
Absolutely.
galaxy the way they were.
Yeah, because he had that whole colony of Talaxians on that big asteroid. That was like what the next to last show of the series, I think.
Yeah.
Spoilers for those who haven't seen Voyager, but yeah, because I remember, again, spoilers for Voyager, but I remember when Voyager finally warped away and came back to the Alpha Quadrant. When the show started, Neelix was like playing subspace chess with somebody. So he was in contact up until the very last. But yeah, they brought Tuvok back, they brought Chakotay back, they brought Janeway back, they brought Tom Paris back in other shows, and Garrett Wong is just kind of sitting there, poor guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but yeah, they seem hesitant to evolve away from the direction the show started off in. And even
I agree.
This season ended up with them back on a protostar with hologram Janeway, heading off on their own adventures, And I was wondering if part of it might be because of the Star Trek universe. Like, they don't really want them to be lower deckers because they have a show about lower deckers.
Yeah.
They don't really want them to be Starfleet Academy cadets because they have a show coming out about Starfleet Academy cadets. So it's sort of like, no, they're the ragtag group of kids. They need to stay the ragtag group of kids. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny you said that, Charles, because I wrote in my notes was they are completely different from most standard Starfleet recruits because of what they've done. And so I could, and I even thought it would be weird to break them up, even though that's what the military does. And I do call Starfleet a military. They break you up. But the only thing I wrote to your point was I could see them becoming almost like a special ops team or whatever after a few more years in the academy, because they really I know they did the whole field commission and stuff like that, but I'm like, but you need a little bit more Starfleet training, in my opinion, under your belt before they just throw a ship at you. And of course, their mission, I'm not sure what that was interesting, given that we're talking about the fall of Mars and the whole stuff with the Romulan Empire. It's interesting. What are they going to be sent out to do? And again, I'm jumping around a lot, but Wesley Crusher oddly said to Dahl, "You're basically," paraphrasing, "your big importance for the universe, this ain't it." And I'm thinking, crap, if this is not it, then what is it?
Right. Saving the Star Trek multiverse isn't enough. Well, what did you think about, hang on. I guess I'm ready. What did you think about them circling back to First Contact Day, the attack on Mars that was referenced on Picard?
That was crazy.
Yeah, I liked it. It caught me off guard. I did not expect that. I mean, because I did write this. It was a very long ending to the show and the series.
Right.
But all the battling and stuff. This I didn't expect at all.
Right.
I expected, I don't know. This is me and my fan fiction. I expected Chakotay to like drop in Iowa or wherever the heck Janeway lives, Indiana, and tell her he loved her or some crap like that. But instead, and evidently it's funny, this is so funny with Star Trek, retired Starfleet admirals turn off their cell phone because she's out there gardening. He's like, yeah, they just blew up Utopia Phoenician Mars. She's like, oh, really? I had no idea. Like, what? Like, dude.
Yeah. I like that they sort of referenced throughout the season the backstory from Picard. This is taking place during that time frame, and made it part of the story. Like they couldn't have backup because Starfleet is too involved with this, the evacuation and so forth of Romulus and all that kind of stuff going on. Starfleet spread thin. I think that makes sense. The kids went to the academy, and I think if you're going to try to fast track them into field promotions, I think that this big catastrophe is a good excuse to do that. And I did like that at that last scene when she comes back, they had segued into the uniforms from the flashback in Star Trek Picard. The ones that he and Rafi were wearing and so forth. I
didn't put that together.
Yeah, they transitioned from the Prodigy era Starfleet uniforms into those to tie it all in. I thought that was I thought that worked out well.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah,
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, and if it continued, I would be interested to see like what else happens. I'll be interested to see like how the Klingons react to the discovery of Romulus, and I would like to see more of the Romulan, diaspora, I guess, as they like get spread around and live on different planets and so forth.
Yeah.
Right. I do like in a situation like this, however I feel about the whole Romulan thing and the whole thing that spun off the Abramsverse and stuff. I do like, as you were saying, Charles, I like when other shows deal with these events because, one of the things, and it is what it is with the writing, but one of the things people always talked about with Deep Space Nine, of course, TNG had ended, which was the whole weird thing is they never kind of adequately explained why the Enterprise and the Captain Picard, which is the flagship, didn't get most, directly involved in the Dominion War. And then they came up with some stuff with it. But I did kind of like this because it does make the universe seem like there's real stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I like, and Star Trek, so you have to have someone do this. I like that Janeway basically stood up and said, this is not the mission of Starfleet. We cannot become insular and isolationist. And Jellicoe is basically saying, and by the way, didn't Jellicoe rise up? My goodness. Right. And Jellicoe is basically like, we got no choice. We got to protect ourselves. And it's kind of sort of like you mentioned Discovery. It's kind of sort of like the excuse they gave Captain Pike when he was so upset that he wasn't in the war with the Klingons. And they kind of said, you're the best of the best, and we need to preserve some of the best of the best.
Right.
So I kind of like that Janeway was saying, we can't give up our principles, what Starfleet's supposed to be. Jellicoe's like, no, we got no choice. And she's like, okay, then I'm going to hold on to a vestige of that while you go do your fighting.
Yeah, I'll use these little ships that we're not doing anything with and send these, give field commissions to these cadets with a emergency hologram or a command hologram and send them out into the galaxy.
Yeah, speaking of my thing about Janeway and Chakotay, okay, so is Janeway hologram in love with Chakotay? Because she was touching his cheek very tenderly.
I don't know. Is real life Janeway in love with Chakotay?
Dude, I cannot tell. That's the most jacked up situation I've ever seen. It's like, why are you playing around with all that mess? Because it was weird because it was, maybe you get used to it in the future, but there was the whole scene where the real Janeway was sitting there with this big smile on her face when she was saying she was going to give him the ship. And then she goes, basically, you're going to need an instructor. And so her duplicate shows up with whom the guy I think she's in love with has been hanging out for 10 years. And she was so cool with everything. I don't know about you, but I'd be really weirded out if my wife went somewhere with a dude who looked just like me. She'd been hanging out with 10 years. Like,
it's kind of flattering, though, if you found her after 10 years and she's with a hologram of you on the planet. Presumably, you could reprogram that thing to be anybody.
Yeah,
this is true. I'd be amazed.
I never thought of it. Yeah, that's funny. I never thought she shows up with like Billy D. Williams hologram or something.
Right. So I want to put it to the folks in the chat. Like, what do you think after watching Voyager and Prodigy? Are Janeway and Chakotay just comrades and friends, or is there more? Are they in love? I'm interested to see what people in the chat think. Yeah. While we continue talking about this.
Yeah. And it really is no right or wrong answer to something like this. It really isn't. People who work together can be absolute friends, or they could be, they can be in love with each other. It's just, it was interesting to see that.
And people bring a lot of themselves to these on-screen relationships. I mean, there were folks writing Kirk Spock / fiction, going back to the 60s and 70s,
Yeah.
And back when they couldn't have gay characters and gay relationships on TV, there was a lot of projecting that. And I mean, people have done that for fictional characters, across media for a long time.
Yeah.
Well, Andrew Robinson himself said that he played Garrick as being in love with Bashir.
Right.
That's what he thought, that they had a relationship. So when they brought in Zial, he was like, wait, what am I supposed to do with that? And then he said, okay.
And Garrick had no chemistry with Zial.
No.
None. Not at all.
It was just creepy.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I mean, looking back at the season, what do we think of the season as a whole?
I think it was really great. I don't think it wasn't as much, these kids are learning about Star Trek like it was the first season, which I think was more exciting for us because we're like, look at all these kids learning about all these things, and look at that, and look at that. So it wasn't quite as exciting in that way, but I think I enjoyed it just as much, I think.
Okay. What about you, Keith?
I felt the same way Veronica said. I think it's weird. I like the first season some ways better. This one was much more, because I tell you, despite everything, I always ended up watching like all the shows in one day. And I will tell you, at the end of that, I'm exhausted because it's just nonstop action and this and that. So it was very good, but it was different. It was very different. You can relate it to something like Alien versus Aliens. One of them is one thing and one of them is another. Right. So I do, what you said, Charles, I do agree. I kind of sort of wish they had let them grow in a different way, because they still kind of ended up like the kids who are kind of outside the law or outside the system, as it were. The doctor even joked at the end, you don't have to steal this ship. but it still sounds like here you are back to the same. But overall, I liked it, and it was an incredible looking season again.
Oh,
My gosh, it looks good.
Yeah, that's something we say every week. I mean, whether you like the story or not, it's an amazing looking show. And I love that it's like getting an extra 90s era Star Trek show, or maybe like a mid 2000s era Star Trek show, but with a budget that blows away anything they could have had in 90s or 2000s Star Trek on television.
Yeah.
I mean, this thing, like the visuals are feature film quality.
Yeah.
And epic in scale.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I like season 2 overall. I agree with you that I think I like season 1 more. And I think part of that was seeing these kids that were from outside of Starfleet getting closer and closer and closer to Starfleet. Right. But then once they got there, once they're in, like they're on a Starfleet ship, they're wearing Starfleet uniforms, even though they're not in Starfleet, they're sort of like trainees or whatever they called them. But then it strains credibility when they're running around loose with no repercussions. You know, they're sneaking into classified briefings and stealing classified spaceship and losing it and then finding it again and then crashing it into a sun. You know what I mean? Like, and traveling through a wormhole, changing the timeline.
Yes.
And there's no repercussions whatsoever. The kid should have been in the brig in episode 2.
Yes.
I mean, at some point, like if Jake and Nog were flying through time portals and changing history, Jake's going to be confined to his cabin. You know what I mean? He's going to be sent to his room and not allowed to play with Nog anymore because you're upsetting the timeline.
Yeah, I liked it. I liked it overall. I thought of Cynthia. She was cool, but she almost bordered on kind of stereotype. Like there was one episode I chuckled when it was actually I guess it was episode 16 when they were first trying to control that time fountain or whatever. And one guy says we can't. She literally says, "Then fix it, you fool." And I was like, if that's not like bad guy villain to call somebody you fool.
But I mean, that we do have examples in real life of what you would think of as a poorly written bad guy villain, who if they were on a television show, we would criticize them. Well, real life politicians.
Yeah.
Now, overall, I like the story. I like Solemn.
Yeah.
I thought they did some really interesting things with it. I like that they sort of embrace the multiverse angle. And that's something, if you're bringing back Voyager characters, then embracing like the timey-wimey nature of Star Trek makes sense, because that was very much what Voyager did. I mean, there was chronoton particles and everything, and weird timeline things going on and so forth. I thought they did a really good job with the legacy characters. Admiral Janeway, I enjoyed Admiral Jellicoe. I liked the Doctor, even though he was just the Doctor. He wasn't like much different from he was on the show. Yeah. I really liked Wesley Crusher. And I really liked Chakotay. I think some of Chakotay's best material is in Prodigy.
Yeah,
absolutely,
100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And speaking of Wesley Crusher, we did get a scene with Wesley and his mom.
Yep.
Yeah, I still think, I mean, I know what he's saying. Basically, he's got a whole universe to fix. I'm like, dude, you travel through time. You could show up yesterday and hang out for a week with her, then leave and be back somewhere the day before yesterday. You know, blah, blah, blah. But at least it was nice that he did show up to talk to her. Yeah. I did not expect that he was going to meet his baby brother.
Yeah. Oh, no, I knew that the moment.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
The moment he got there, I was like, oh, he's going to meet Jack. Yeah.
So I'm guessing this is when she lives in London. I didn't look at the skyscape, that's the buildings outside, but remember she had said that she lived in London when Jack was young, and that's where he picked up the accent. It wasn't genetic. But yeah, I like that they brought it full circle, because like I said, we got a little peek of Wesley in Picard. We got a little flashback with Wesley on Lower Decks. And here we got him, I mean, full grown Wesley Crusher. We got, you know, him meeting Jack, and that sort of tying it all together. You know what I mean? I think that this episode, and even like the loose threads, I felt like TNG sort of dropped Wesley, and like, the late seasons, they didn't know what to do with him. Yeah. And then it was like, now you'll become a traveler. And, you know, like it just felt unresolved. And I feel like all of that Wesley, Jack, Dr. Crusher stuff is sort of tied up now. I feel like if they never touched it again, I would feel a lot more satisfied with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to have heard the conversation, because he smiled. But here's the thing: being Wesley, does he already know Picard was the father? Or I mean, I guess it's not like you couldn't kind of guess. I mean, it's kind of like it's not like you think it's Riker or something. It's probably your first thought is, it's Jean-Luc, isn't it? But But he was delighted to know he has a little brother. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
You know, now after watching this, I wish that last scene in Picard when Q came to Jack, I wish that had been Wesley.
Yeah.
And like Wesley had been like, your adventure is just beginning. You know what I mean? Like that would have been a cool tie-in.
That would have been even better.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because you kind of, and also you wonder, does Jack have any? Well, let's see, they got different fathers, so I don't know where the powers come from.
Yeah, Jack has board powers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Wow, what a family.
Wesley has time powers. Starfleet Medical should be taking a real close look at Dr. Crusher.
Yeah.
She keeps having super babies.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. I will say that I thought that the ending of the season, possibly the series, it was much more satisfying than what I thought Discovery's was.
Okay.
I thought I thought the montage of, and then I thought, gosh, it's only 2 seasons, but of course there's a whole bunch of episodes. I thought the montage and how they tied everything back to everything from, like you said, the ship was restored to Dahl, putting the com badge back there. Mm-hmm. That was actually pretty effective. I thought that actually worked.
Yeah, and now as we're talking about series finales, Ouroboros might be one of them. Like that.
Yeah.
Assuming that Prodigy doesn't come back in some form, or if it doesn't come,
crossed, it does.
If it doesn't come back for season 3, if I was them and I wanted Paramount Plus movies, I would be greenlighting a Prodigy movie like yesterday.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like they would do a great job with the film.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is not the first sci-fi episode to use Ouroboros. Are you familiar with that, Veronica?
No.
The dragon eating its own tail from mythology.
Yes, I know that, but I didn't know the name of it.
Yeah, there was an Andromeda episode called that, and a Loki episode, and I'm sure a whole bunch of them.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a Stargate episode called that.
Maybe there's a Stargate episode called Everything. There's been a lot of episodes.
I mean, if it was a mythology thing and Stargate didn't use it,
Right.
I don't know what they were doing.
Right. Well, if they do come back for season 3, what would you like to see for season 3?
I hadn't thought about that because when they first said they were going to go out, I was thinking, was Janeway going to make them like covert ops to do missions? The example I could think of, I don't know if anybody's ever saw it. There's a DC comic series cartoon series called Young Justice, and it's phenomenally good. It's basically all the sidekicks, they call them, like Robin and Superman's clone Superboy. It's an incredibly good cartoon series, which I didn't expect. But the long story short is they became black ops and kind of covert operatives because they could do things that the mainstream heroes like Superman and Batman couldn't do. So I kind of wouldn't mind see them doing that, because since they're young and quote unquote cadets or whatever, ensigns in training, they might be able to go places that straight up admirals and stuff can't go, because they would raise eyebrows more. They're also one of the most diverse crews I think you'll ever see. You have a Medusan, whatever Murph is. You've got Jankum. Well, he's a Tellarite, so everybody knows what he is. Dahl is like 28 different species put together. So,
I would love to have seen more of that storyline.
Me too.
Yeah, so if they do come back for season 3, I would love to see more of the Dahl storyline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Like, there's not a human in the crew.
Yeah.
They're all just different species, which is
closest thing is hologram Janeway.
Right.
Yeah. And is that the whole crew for the ship? Just those folks?
Because they're on a protostar, which I guess you can do, like, it just has a small crew. But it seems like if there was a season 3, it's going to be basically like season 1, where they're running around on the protostar with hologram Janeway, but this time with Starfleet's backing.
Yeah.
And having
to a point,
having missions and so forth.
Like Starfleet isn't going to come out and rescue them or anything.
Right. Maybe.
Yeah. So I was thinking the rest of Nova Squadron, the other 3 people in Nova Squadron were going to be invited, or 2 people. 2 people. It was 3. I was thinking maybe they would all be invited, but I guess not.
I don't think we've talked about that Lurian at all the whole season, but she was a she. There was a female Lurian, which I don't think we've ever seen on screen before.
Oh, yeah.
Notice she never said anything either.
Grom? Well, she kind of grunted and stuff. But yeah, she didn't speak. They do that with all of them. I would love it if she was just like super talkative.
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
That's what they say. That's what they say about Morn too. But I love it if on screen, if she was like super eloquent with like a British accent and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
British.
Speaking of British accent, I did have to laugh when I said Ascension was borderline kind of stereotyped. I was like, she even had a British accent. So when she called the guy, when she said, "Fix it, you fool," and she had a British accent, like, wow, she's right out of a comic book.
You never
or
say that
Bond
at work
movie.
to your coworkers? You're in IT.
Yeah. Well, we do throw the ID10T comment around about people.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I mean, I think I enjoyed the show.
Me too.
I don't think it was better than Deep Space Nine.
No
not even
way.
close. I'm sorry. Whoever said that, you're wrong.
I think
A lot of
people are
people-
excited.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, people are excited and supporting it, and I like that. It was still, to me, very much a Star Trek for kids,
Yes.
Yes.
which isn't bad. I think.
No. I thoroughly enjoyed it, but it was not better than Deep Space
Yeah.
Nine.
No, not
And
at all.
for me, when I was a kid, Star Trek was the Star Trek for kids. So, but I appreciate them reaching out to other demographics. You know, instead of just, I wouldn't want it to just be for old nerds, but there was a lot there for old nerds.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Right.
like I prefer the adult characters and the legacy characters on the show, but of course I do.
Yeah.
You
Me too.
know?
Same here. Yeah, I would love to follow Janeway and the primary crew. I would have had a good time.
I
with
was
that.
worried. I thought Commander Tysus bit the dust
Yeah, I know.
when he got rapidly aged. I was like, oh no, I like that guy. But
Yes.
Magic.
it's Star Trek. And he was like, oh, he'll be fine.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up because that was the note I wrote. Now, it doesn't matter how he was aged. It was chronally. He aged. And the doctor said, he threw out some name, some MacGuffin. I was like, oh, so when you grow old in the Federation, they can just make you young again? Because it doesn't matter that he was hit with a time field.
Right.
He aged.
Yeah.
And so therefore they should be able to do that with anybody who gets like 80 or 90. They just give you this fix and you're young again.
They should have been able to do that TNG thing they did to Dr. Pulaski,
Mhm.
the transporter to anybody as well, but they don't.
Yeah. As everybody says, there's too many ways Star Trek can make you young and all this stuff again. They bring it up and then they just like, oh, let's not talk about that again.
Well, it could just be that everybody in the Federation is like Picard, and they when given the option to be young again, decides not to.
Yeah, I guess.
They just
I am not that
tell
enlightened.
those people about it, and if they find out about it, then they can make the decision.
I don't know if
It's-
I'd want to be 15 again, but maybe if 25, I'd take 25.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah.
15 might be
Yeah.
rough.
I'm not that enlightened. I remember going way back to the original,
21.
to the animated series. Who was the first admiral of the Enterprise? April.
April.
Robert April.
Yeah.
In the last episode of the animated series.
The
Remember
counterclock
they
incident.
That's it. And remember, they had an opportunity to stay young, and his wife was like, "Yeah." And then he grabs her and says, "No, we've had our time." And she's like, "Okay." I don't know. I was like, "Okay, see you, see you."
Yeah, let's have 40 more years. Let's do it again. It was great.
I
Yeah.
mean, that brings to mind Stargate when there was like a clone of Jack, and
Yeah.
and he was like, "Look, I'm 15 again, and I got like 40 years of experience. I'm gonna go charm these girls."
Yeah, he went to hit on high school girls, which is a little weird.
It was very creepy.
The memories of being a 50-year-old.
Yeah, that was very creepy. That was very strange. I thought there was a couple of things they did in the show I thought was funny because, of course, you have to. Yet again, it's just fun. All that super advanced technology, and they never have enough memory for a hologram, except barely. Because even that Jane was like, we don't have enough memory. Like, seriously, you build this thing, and it's like every hologram you build in the Starfleet becomes sentient, and they never have enough memory for it. Because they almost didn't have enough for her again. So I was like, wow, that's pretty interesting.
They didn't have one of those little cubes like Moriarty had,
Yeah.
Yes.
A
couple quick comments about that. Because I did like the scene with hologram Janeway and the Doctor, and she was a big fan of the Doctor's.
Yeah.
Yes.
That
the
was
holo novels.
cute.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
that
was
was good.
adorable.
And then a quick complaint: we never got a counseling scene with Dr. Gnome, or with Counselor Gnome.
No.
How are you going to make Jason Alexander's Tellarite character a counselor and not have a single counseling session the entire season?
I kind of forgot his character existed. And when I was watching the end credits one time, it showed Jason Alexander. And I had to be reminded, oh, that's right. Jason Alexander's on this show. Because I barely pay attention to him. He grumped when Gwen was in the mission planning. He basically said something to the effect of, "What's this kid doing in here?" And she said, "Because the Admiral asked me." But other than that, yeah, he didn't do a whole lot in the whole thing.
Jason Alexander in your cast.
Right.
Use him.
Yeah. He made a big impression in TNG. We had that crazy hair when he was part of that.
Voyager?
Voyager. Thank you, Voyager.
Yeah,
it was,
he was
it was
in-
that the consortium or whatever they were.
Think Tank.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. He made a better impression there.
Well, he's a big Star Trek fan. He does
Mhm.
a Shatner impression and everything.
Oh, I've never heard that.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised though.
On the whole, I think it was a good quality show.
Me too.
And something that I think Prodigy does really well is when they bring back legacy things like the ships and so forth, they can make them exact. Like they not exact, but look very close to what you'd expect. But then they also do their own designs. Like Solemn is their own wild thing. But then when you see a Klingon bird of prey, it looks like a Klingon bird of prey.
Yeah.
You know, they do a really good job of mixing their own new stuff with legacy stuff. And legacy characters they do a good job with, and with their own new characters they do a good job with. But also they do a good job of referencing all the different Star Treks, both in style and in content. I mean, we got a lot of stylistic nods to like JJ Trek and different eras of Star Trek. But then they referenced, I mean, Discovery got several references on the show this season. They referenced classic Star Trek episodes. They do a good job of just mixing every conceivable kind of Star Trek together.
Yeah.
They really do.
Yeah.
Real quick before we forget, go out, I had one real quick question. So Gwen's father does not ever become the bad guy, or what?
Not in this timeline.
Yeah, so that's what I don't know how then Gwen is created and then all of them come together. I don't
Because
understand that.
Gwen's father is in another timeline, and so he comes back in time from the alternate timeline. It's like the timeline forked,
Okay.
and then so he's on this timeline over here and comes back in time. But now the guy, what was his name? Iltheon or something.
Yeah.
But he's now living in the prime timeline over here. You
So
need, imagine Doc Brown drawing the timeline skewed into this tangent, creating an alternate 1985.
So did the Prodigy crew cross over into a new timeline that was a good one, or is the other bad people in another time?
Yeah,
they're the ones.
I think that the bad Solemn is in the skewed timeline, and that we're still in the prime timeline.
And so we have, but now bad Ascension is still alive, right? Because they took her power or gave Gwen more power. She didn't die, right?
Yeah, I don't think they killed her.
Yeah,
but she's gonna have a terrible time because everybody turned against her.
Yeah, and her younger self, like you said earlier, Charles, her younger self was like, "Oh my God, I hope I don't turn into that thing. I can't believe my future self." That would mess with your head if you found your evil future self. Like you found out your evil future self was Hitler or Idi Amin or something. Like, crap, I didn't know that was in me.
Yeah, like if Trump was you from the future, like that's what Ascensia is. Like, oh my God.
Yeah, that was why. Although she did say at the very end when the loom and stuff was coming through, she said, "What have I done?" Yeah, and it's like, well, it's a little late for that, because also she wasn't just bad, but she was like going to kill people. Because remember the guy said when they were trying to sneak onto the planet, they one of the goofy lackeys said something like, "You're restricted because that's where they're going to be terminated." So they were getting ready to execute them, and she was straight up trying to kill Gwen. So yeah, she was pretty intense. But then she goes, "What have I done?" I'm like, oh, well, I don't know.
Well, you were evil all year.
Yeah.
So.
You sucked all the joy out of Solemn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, now we're back to talking about legacy Star Trek and other Star Trek topics until we find out Lower Decks. We still don't have a release date for Lower Decks.
Right.
Usually it's been sort of like September-ish, right?
Mhm.
But we don't have any announcements yet. So I don't know if they were waiting until after a certain amount of time. Maybe we'll find out at Comic-Con, because they're going to be at Comic-Con. So probably Comic-Con, they'll give us a release date for Lower Decks.
And
if I was Paramount Plus, I might try to stagger it, because it's going to be more of a wait for Strange New Worlds.
Yeah.
There might not be any new Star Trek in 2025. I mean, maybe Strange New Worlds will come out next year. Well, I guess probably Strange New Worlds and the movie. And Lower Decks is probably all we have until 2026, which would be probably when Starfleet Academy debuts. We'll probably get more information at Comic-Con, though. Anyways, in the meantime, we'll be talking about Legacy Trek and topics like that. Veronica, what are we talking about next week?
So next week, we are actually talking about Subspace Rhapsody Picture Show, which we will be doing at DragonCon, and I'm playing Pelia. We'll have the director and some other cast members on with us as well to talk about the project and how it came to be, and how we're super excited because there's actually going to be Strange New Worlds cast at DragonCon. Woohoo!
Do you think anything will come to the picture show?
Oh, I hope so. I know that some of the people that are not coming back, or at least not on the list so far, that were there last year, they were like, "Oh yes, I want to see that." They're not on the list. but Melissa Navia is, and I think she would flip over it.
Sweet.
I think Ethan Peck would be like, meh.
I think they would all come.
I think they would like sneak in the back.
Yeah,
or
because
something.
if you're on a Star Trek show, like surely you'd be delighted to find out that your episodes are now entering sort of the fan thing.
Yeah.
Like fans are
Yeah.
reenacting you. Like I would love it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that'll be next week at 8 p.m. Eastern. We go live on Thursday evenings, every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. And so next week will be Subspace Rhapsody Picture Show. I think the following week is that when we're gonna have Elaine and Matt watch TV on to talk about.
I think that was their preference, the 8th, right? The 8th of August, yeah.
Okay, well, I'm just going to announce it, and they can catch up when they hear this episode. That's what you get for not being here this week. So yeah, and then on the 8th we'll have Elaine and Matt Sweatman from Elaine and Matt Watch TV, and we'll be doing a deep dive into Star Trek Next Generation season 3, which Elaine has just watched for the first time. So I'll be interested to find out. There's a lot of fan knowledge. Sort of all the general fan opinion is that season 3 is like TNG became TNG. That's when they found their footing. So I'll be interested if someone who's just watched 1, 2, and 3 back to back, fresh, what her opinion will be. I think that'll be interesting to talk about.
Yeah, we already discussed it is going to be really hard to discuss season 3 in 1 hour, even from a broad view, because you could make one casual comment about one episode and you've done the whole hour because there's so much great stuff in that season. This will be fun.
Yeah, so join us Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern. We have a lot of fun things coming up. And if you miss it, it'll still be available on YouTube after the fact and as Earth Station Trek on your favorite podcast platform for the audio podcast. So, Keith, where can people find more of you?
You can find me on X and Facebook, primarily the ESO Network Facebook groups.
And how about us, Veronica?
Feltnerdy.com.
That's right. And coming up in August, we'll be appearing at the Sinful Variety Show. If you like adult things, this is a burlesque, drag, adult puppetry, which we'll be doing. You can follow us at Felt Nerdy and Dirty across social media or on YouTube. If you want to see some of what we're talking about when we talk about dirty puppet shows, you can we'll see some of our performances on YouTube. Or if you like the family-friendly stuff, we have Felt Nerdy across social media. And as Felt Nerdy, we'll be appearing at Dragon Con, doing several all-ages shows and an adult-oriented show. So follow along. I don't want to announce it yet because we don't have confirmation, I don't think, but we may actually be doing a panel as well. Just talking. No puppets, nothing. Just like this, but in front of people.
It'll be so easy.
I know.
I don't have to build 10 puppets. What?
It'll be the easiest thing we've ever done at Dragon Con. Where else do people find us?
Monkeying Around, a podcast about the monkeys.
That's right. And do you have a closing for us this week?
I need to brush up on my puppetry.
Perfect. All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks
for
joining us.
Goodbye.